right, we are back, and I got some merch on right now. Yoga for Your Intellect. I got a little YFYI t-shirt. Has a little text exchange on the back. It's beautifully designed, but the words themselves are a text exchange between myself and my teacher, Joseph. So the founder of the ashram is Swami Parthasarathy. You've heard me mention him before quite a few times. He is the author of, I think, in my opinion, the most impactful books on Vedanta out there. Vedanta Treatise being the most widely known one in his magnum opus, so to speak. But his student, Joseph Emmett, was one of the first people that I ever met to discuss these concepts with. I loved consuming Alan Watts like crazy online. But Alan Watts died in, I think it was 1973. And other famous Vedantins that I loved and would only realize years later, studied Vedanta and studied the Upanishads on a daily basis. People like Joseph Campbell, people like Carl Jung. I obviously could not have a conversation with them until doing that mile-wide, inch-deep, just kind of like meandering around the zoo of philosophical concepts and lineages, came across Advaita Vedanta. Non-dual end of knowledge is what it means in Sanskrit, or end of the Vedas, which is a pun on the term of end of knowledge. Vedas mean knowledge, those 4 textbooks we've talked about before. Oldest philosophical texts in the world, the Vedas. At the end of them, you have Vedanta, end of the Vedas, which are another word for the Upanishads. The Upanishads are the philosophical texts that sit at the end of these 4 big textbooks that might have much more mundane things in there, like how to cook or how to do a certain ritual that they practiced culturally back then. But the non-ritualized side of things, the philosophical concepts themselves, they're in the Upanishads at the end of these 4 textbooks. And when I started to become aware in terms of continuous study of the world's oldest philosophy, Vedanta had these knowledge bombs that were blowing me away as I read them. Things like, the intellect is the capacity to see the end in the beginning. Things like, that which is forced is not forceful. Or, that which is nectar in the beginning is poison in the end. And that which is poison in the beginning is like nectar in the end. Feel free to pause this and jot down any of those last 3 just knowledge bombs that rocked me when I first heard them, and then just grew. It's just like it just kept exploding over time in terms of value in my life. But as I came across those on a written page or in books like Alan Watts' The Book, The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are, his most famous book, which is all about Advaita Vedanta. About a month after saying, okay, I want to go deep into this philosophy, I arrived at this hotel here in Malibu, actually. I was living in San Francisco. The time came down here for a getaway, my wife and I, and I opened up the side table of this hotel room next to the bed to put my wallet and my phone in the side table just to kind of disconnect for that weekend getaway. Open up the drawer for where my wallet and my phone are going to go. And I see this book, Vedanta Treatise. Pull out the book and I put my phone and wallet in there, which 8 years later, I had this reflection on, whoa, that was a pretty powerful, symbolic moment, what I was putting away and what I was picking up. But then the next morning met Joseph Emmett, and Joseph has been my teacher ever since, along with Swami Parthasarathy. And the merchandise that I started this episode with, Yoga for Your Intellect, YFYI, we host a podcast, a conversational podcast on this very philosophy called YFYI. And on the back of the shirt is this text exchange that we had. I texted him once, kind of tongue-in-cheek, about something. Maybe we were about to record an episode. I can't remember exactly what it was, and I said something like, let's get realized. And he wrote back, there's literally nothing else to do. There's literally nothing else to do. Bet you didn't predict a bomb like that to go on the back of a t-shirt. But that is exactly why it is on the back of this t-shirt. A few chapters of reading Vedanta Treatise, you get to a point where you realize your mind might be attached to all of these various pursuits, but your intellect, the volume, and the signal is crystal clear. And when you can tap into that crystal clear signal, what it says is, there is literally nothing else to do but to get liberated, to realize who we actually are. And that is yoga for your intellect. And that cultivation, that discovery of that single pursuit, and all its myriad of symbolic paths that you might even think it's through, creature comforts in this world, a bank account, name, fame, position, status. But your intellect speaks up, cuts through that noise and says, you know what you're really seeking is liberation. The fostering and cultivation of that signal. That is yoga for your intellect. And speaking of, go check out some of our episodes of Yoga for Your Intellect to see the conversations that Joseph and I have had over the last few years. It's our weekly conversations that we have had each week for about 8 years. And a few years ago, we decided to start recording them. So go check them out. I'll put the link in the show notes. And if you are serious about a Yoga for Your Intellect, then I would highly recommend reading Vedanta Treatise by the master himself, Swami Parthasarathy. That's today's daily reflection on the Daily Vedantic. Thanks for listening to the Daily Vedantic. This reflection is part of a free repeating 2-year course in Advaita Vedanta. Rooted in the timeless wisdom of the Upanishads, arguably the oldest philosophical texts on earth, you can begin with episode 1, which gives the 15-minute overview of the whole philosophy of Vedanta, or you can join the journey with any episode at any point. But the critical aspect of this course, of understanding and mastering anything, is to study and reflect, even for 10 to 15 minutes on the timeless each day, preferably at the start of your day. As is said in this philosophy, reflection is 100,000 times as powerful as listening. So listen, journal, sit with, discuss these concepts, or ask questions at thedailyvedantic.com with our AI-powered chatbot informed by about 700 episodes here, as regularly as one can if you want to see clarity and peace almost effortlessly unfold in your daily life. And if it doesn't result in a near immediate increase in clarity and peace, then toss aside and feel free to never listen again. One of the things that you might notice is after 7 or 8 days in a row, this doesn't feel like a discipline. This feels like a visit with a best friend to dive into the timeless with daily reflection. Within a few days, it becomes one of your favorite parts of the day. You can also find out more, including news about in-person events in Los Angeles and beyond, at the Daily Vedantic on Instagram or through our weekly newsletter at thedailyvedantic.com. Additionally, check out the links in our show notes for more resources like the books that are mentioned most frequently in the episodes, including Vedanta Treatise, perhaps the simplest and most straightforward read on this philosophy I've ever come across. Until next time, and from the entire team that works on the Daily Vedantic project, thanks for listening.